गजाननं भूतगणादिसेवितं कपित्तजम्बोफलसारभक्षितम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वरपादपङ्कजम् शदाननां कुङ्कुमरक्तवर्णं महामतिं दिव्यमयूरवाहनं रुद्रस्य सूनुं सुरसैन्यनाथं गुहं सदाहं शरणं प्रपद्ये या कुन्दन्तु तुषारहालधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा पूजिता सा मम पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाध्यापहा ॐ नमः शिवाय गुरवे सच्चिदानन्दमूर्ते निष्पम्पजाय शान्ताय श्रीशिवानन्दाय ते नमः श्रीविष्णुदेवानन्दाय ते नमः सर्वमङ्गलमङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणे नमोस्तुते नारायणे नमोस्तुते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पीस 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 बोल सद्गुरु शिवान महाराज की जय बोल श्री विष्णुदेवान महाराज की जय. Om Namah Shivaya, good evening. I welcome you tonight to this very sweet little workshop called Be the Architect of Your Destiny. These are in fact the words used by Swami Shivananda. And the idea is that as we're approaching the new year, as we're coming out of the fall, is to dedicate some time to self-introspection and to perhaps just encourage us to think a little bit better and a little bit brighter and more positively into the future. So that's the idea behind this workshop. So the very words, be the architect, it means simply to work according to some kind of a blueprint or some kind of a plan. So it is the knowledge of how and what you're going to accomplish and whatever you have envisioned for yourself. Therefore, we need to have some kind of to set up some principles, then to develop some methods, and of course to have different materials for working, just as an architect does. Of course, the materials that we have as human beings is our mind, so it's our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. It is these things that really constitute who we are. Often when we try to think of what a person is, we think of what a person has accomplished in their life and what they may do in their life. But in reality, really our thoughts and whatever we are on a psychological level is really who and what we are in terms of also our future. So today I will just share a few ideas, or try to outline a few ideas how to live your life to your fullest potential and to the utmost, and of course how to and what to pay attention to in this life journey. Now, the first thing I'd like to say something very important. You're all spiritual aspirants, and I think we all know that there are perhaps two levels of involvement, of being involved in life. One is what I like to call a mediocre way, and this is like a following just like what everybody else does, having a family, working, and all that. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this, but what we're actually saying here, that what is mediocre, is just in a context of how we think about what we do. So the doing is not as important. Of course, it is important from some other point of view, but it is important how we look at it, what our attitude is, what are our most powerful convictions and thoughts about what we do in our life. As somebody said very beautifully, our religion doesn't consist in what we worship and what we believe in, but it consists in what we think and what we feel. So that's the idea. The mediocre life is not the spiritual life. In order to be a spiritual person, one needs to step out of this mediocre living and thinking, and we need to expand our thought so that we can take on something that comes from our past and project it very far into the future. And that simply cannot be done in a mediocre kind of a way of thinking. Therefore, I encourage you to, in the same way as Swami Shivananda used to encourage us all, and Swami Vishnu, is to try to think our best thoughts and outside of the box with a simple sentence like this: it is better to aim at the lion and miss it than to aim at the jackal and catch it. Everybody's happy with the jackal gift, but we would really like to have a trophy of being able to catch the lion, which means to be able to go as far as we can in this life. And as Swami Shivananda says, it may be better to lay one's own life and everything else for the highest principle that he or she wants to realize in their life than to sacrifice that opportunity, that possibility for something that everybody else does. And we know that ordinary life with ordinary thoughts is filled with countless problems, worries, and other things that we don't even need to think about right now. So I wanted to just encourage you to be the lions or lionesses, because that is the secret of being a master of one's own destiny. We need to project ourselves of ordinary norms and standards and to be able to bring down the peace and the love that we all are. So you'll be surprised that many people don't think of their lives as architects. In fact, the majority of people believe that the architects are truly the forces and the conditions outside of their reach. And so here we are changing this, and naturally, majority of people make the to-do lists about, the external life and what they're trying to accomplish and build, but very few people actually plan their mental or psychic or psychological, if you may say, and also spiritual development. So this includes sometimes also ourselves. Sometimes we also, when we lose the track, when we lose the inspiration, when we lose the pace, the rhythm of what we want to do, is often it is at these moments that we forgot to plan our little exercises for the day, our little commitments. We forget to work on our attitudes. We forget to work on our love and our giving and our charity. Sometimes we get so self-absorbed and unfortunately sometimes self-centered that we forget that this is something that is available to us every moment of this life. I mean, truly, a life of spiritual aspirant is available all the time, meaning the potential, all the possibilities of life are available any moment in our life. A Buddha used to say that one can realize one's own self or nirvana at any moment in their life if they're really ready for it, if they're open to it, if they know how to live it. So one, perhaps the idea that comes to my mind, and I always remember this, this is one of the guiding principles, is this: you must always try to live your life anew and afresh. I know that some of you have been in my workshops and you know about this principle. And I guarantee you that if you approach something with the new eyes, two things happen. One, all fear of the unknown disappears, and your love develops for that which you look at with your new eyes. Let's think about ordinary our relationships are like that. If we look at the person that we live with as somebody that we know exactly how they were yesterday and the day before yesterday and last month, we would not see them in a new way. But it is difficult to see things in a new way because we're very often stuck in our own ways, in our habits of seeing things. And this is what, when we think about stepping out of this kind of mediocre level and jumping out of the box of conditioning, is that what we need to learn is to live our life afresh, anew, and continuously feed of this next moment of inspiration or creativity. So many people unfortunately assume that the inner work will take place and unfold just by itself. We don't really realize that there is a training to be done for the mind. In fact, this is all what yoga is about, meditation is about. Um, any any aspect of yogic practice is nothing but a means of development of new awareness or newer awareness, in a way, and it's to build that inner work for the highest realization. So majority of people, they get distracted naturally by whatever lies brings them at the moment, and of course by pursuing the pleasures. And this is exactly what this box looks like. It's basically conditioned by having to do this and something else, and then after that I will enjoy myself. So Swami Shivananda, this principle is like this. One has to know exactly what one is going to live in the next 24 hours. Now, this is more challenging than it appears to be, because you will see that for most of our day, our mind is kind of on a autopilot, and it tends to, of course, slide back into all conditioning, all thinking, and then simply into the state of sleep. So, to be the architect of one's destiny, you need to start to you have to start to get awakened to this power of thought, and this is what we're also going to discuss it. So, one thing is to know how you want to live, how even you want to die, and what also how to differentiate in your daily life between the essential and non-essential. This power of discrimination has to be like a sword available to cut any unnecessary things in our day. For example, you can be on the phone, you could be talking to somebody for 20 minutes, but you can also concentrate and say things in 5 minutes what could be said in 20 in a kind of a dissipated way. So anyway, we need to learn to structure our days and life in such a way that we do not end up living a joyless life, a life which is filled with disappointments and then with grief. And perhaps I would think most people live this kind of lives. And so also majority of people, without knowing, they're naturally more optimistic when they're young. And as we start to, get older and have gone through many, many experiences, and after we received a few powerful lessons from life, we feel much less optimistic. Now, the idea is not just to position the pessimism against optimism, but it is a matter of utilizing our power thought and power choice. So by the time we get older, we already have experienced the stress, the loss, anger, and all these things. So we need a healthier approach to our life. And this is what Swami Shivananda calls a practical idealism. So we have to have some ideals set up and then be practical about realizing them. So now we're kind of ready to start. The first thing I would like to everyone to concentrate on is on the cultivation of the attitudes that in this relative reality that we're aware of, that we're part of, the thoughts are the only reality. I mean, of course, the actions and the thoughts proceed from them. So this conviction, if you really like meditate on it every day and you hold on to it, you will see that this is a very big power behind what you can accomplish in your life. Is to know the power of thought, is to know the power of life. Therefore, when we say to have this conviction, this attitude, this needs to be carried on throughout your day, and you may also want to write it on a piece of paper, on several pieces of paper. Remind yourself the thoughts are the reality, or the only reality in a sense. And for about 3 months, as Swami Shivananda will recommend, you can hold on to one principle and make it into the kind of the pillars of your understanding of spirituality. Everything is thought. Thought is the most creative force in the universe, and it is the very creative force that you can utilize for the highest achievements in this lifetime. Naturally, when we think of this uh, accepting the power of thought in this way, we also think of a law of karma. Therefore, these two are connected. So now I will remind you on what Swami Shivananda says. If you sow a thought, you reap an action. If you sow, like you're putting a seed in the soil, an action, what happens? That we create a particular tendency. If we sow a tendency, we reap a habit. If you sow a tendency, you reap a character. sorry, habits, you reap a character, and if you sow a character, you reap a destiny. So all destiny is the play out of our thoughts. Originally, everything that is materialized now originally was a thought initially. And the thoughts are not just simple things, they're magnetic forces, and magnetic and electric, or you can say psychic forces, that immediately when we think of something, each thought within us starts to draw to itself elements from the external environment, from external environment meaning thought environment, and starts to lay the foundation for the future events to take place. Now we will see in a minute why I'm saying this, but remember that these thoughts are like a little drops of rain that become ultimately they form a mighty river of your destiny. So my reminder tonight is to remind you to simply to have you committed to the way of your thinking, and also on the raising of the vibration of the thoughts. Nobody is able to think, I mean, not nobody, but of course, sages and saints, none of us is really able to think positively all day long. And the reason for it is because we know the three gunas, the tamas, which is kind of the energy that pulls down to inertia, inertia in our thinking, inertia in our will, and our emotion, our love, and everything. Rajas, of course, is a distracted one, passion-driven, desire-driven energy, and then we have Sattva, which is the positive, the one that we discover ourselves in our best moments. Let's go Sattva. Sattva, naturally the most spiritual. The greatest reflection of who we are happens in the Sattva guna. But how to keep the Sattva guna always high up? Well, that requires a plan and a method. Requires that you keep a spiritual diary, have your little exercises for yourself. I'm sure you know this, but the question is how much can we really apply this? So there are, short and long-term devices, if I may say, or methods for changing the vibration of one's own mind. From simply doing asanas and exercising also, and other types of exercise and breathing and relaxation and meditation. All these things are wonderful ways to change our vibration. Kirtan, chanting, we know this, but we don't think of these methods as the ways of transforming our mind. We generally approach a practice with an intention to just feel peaceful and happy, perhaps, about this. But we don't realize that the very peace, the very happiness that we experience after doing yoga is due to the change of vibration in our mind. So anyway, I'll remind you that there is this power in each one of the thoughts, and the secret is to be consistent and, you know, applying a singular kind of intention, a thought after thought of the same quality until this becomes, as I said, a pillar of your life or a foundation of your greater realization in life. So there is a plan, of course, for each one of us in our life, and that is to simply learn and master our lessons, and of course to be ultimately reaching this state of consciousness where we are one, or we can say we are also at that in that particular state we're free from all limitations. See, all limitations are truly nothing but illusions. It's unfortunately we are so deeply identified with our body, with our thoughts and feelings and emotions, that we take everything to be reality, everything that we perceive, and we also perceive our thoughts and their facts, so we take that to be the reality. And of course, on one level, this is important to know, but ultimately, I'm saying from a higher point of view, from the level of our true nature, we must learn that all illusions must be broken, and therefore we must be free from the limitations, which are, as I said, nothing but illusions. Okay, now let us go back to the idea of thoughts and how they connected to our destiny. I don't really need to discuss this too much, but I will just say that our present life, as you know, is the result of our thoughts, particularly, and actions, of course, done in the previous lifetimes. So our present life is the result of the past thoughts. And our future, of course, is made up of our thoughts of today. So naturally, there is a discrepancy because what we are experiencing sometimes in our daily life is not really what we want to think and what we would like to be, and yet we experience it. All we should remember is that we experience the results of past actions. So every person, through the power of the thought, is kind of a mind builder in a sense, or like a bricklayer. So every thought is like a little brick laid in that edifice of the mind. So we are architects. So therefore, pay attention to your thoughts. And as Yoga Vasishta says very beautifully, there is no higher power than the right action in the present moment. So we got three things. We got the higher power. There's no higher power than the right commitment, right decision is to think your best thought, to do your best act in a given moment, the present moment. Now I'm going to underline this regardless of what is taking place in your life. You have the freedom, and you have to remember this freedom, which is called the freedom of choice. This is the greatest gift that we as human beings have. The animals don't have this freedom, they don't have this power of choice. Why can't we utilize it? Because we have habituated ourselves to thinking that we're the slaves, in a sense, of our thought patterns and that we must follow what we think and what we think is right. And it is only when we realize that this doesn't lead us to our goal that we have, designed for ourselves, we start to examine our attitudes, our thoughts, and everything. So remember, there is no higher power than a right action in the present moment, which is also the right thought. And as this famous writer Victor wrote in his book, In Search of Freedom, he said something about the attitude, and I like you to perhaps memorize this, that is everything can be taken away, but one, the last of human freedom, and that is the freedom to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances. Now, that's something I'd like you to write down or perhaps uh, repeat it in your mind and, memorize it. So everything can be taken from a human being, but one, which is the last of human freedoms, and that is that we have this right to choice in any given set of circumstances. When things cannot be changed on the outside, we must remember that things can be changed, adapted, and greatly improved on the inside. This is the secret of being an architect in our life. And I'm going to move on to something important now. Here we will see that. Okay, so the condition of working with thoughts is first developing a very profound and a subtle awareness of the thoughts. Because thoughts are very subtle. And the problem with thoughts is that when they take place, when they manifest in our mind, we're caught by surprise. In fact, most of us, we don't even realize that we have been thinking. This is the issue that we have. So an act of an awareness is like waking up from a dream that we have dreamt, and that means that we, in the process of dreaming or thinking a particular thought, we have identified with that. But the reason why identification takes place is because the awareness was pretty much absent. There has to be some awareness, but as I said, we are thinking machines, and our thinking process is very much on a subconscious level, which means this is where our work begins. So I would conclude by saying that your duty is to simply not let any thought or psychic phenomena or an emotion or feeling or sensation as such come by without you being aware of them. So that's the secret of being able to manage your, your thinking process in a right way, because everybody has negative thoughts. Me, you, and many other people, we know that everybody, there's nobody who doesn't have negative thoughts. So what we need to remember is that we need to kind of exercise this uh, this ability to be aware of it, perhaps just by asking a simple questions. What have I been thinking about? Or what am I thinking about? Frequently interrupt this thinking process, write it on a piece of paper because you will forget as you practice, and look at it and I will say, what have I been thinking about? You will notice that there is always perhaps one thought that you are more prominently aware of, or a few ideas, and then the rest of it is very, very subconscious. For example, when you have a thought of somebody, and what happens, there could be just a thought, which is naturally a perception, which one should be aware of. But what happens is that there are layers of superimpositions that the mind attaches to that form of a person, and it is there where the likes and dislikes come and all kinds of other things. So it's projections of the mind and nothing but the subconsciousness. And this is what a yogi is trying to stop. He's trying to stop because it is these projections that create the illusion of a limitation and the illusion of objective so-called happiness and all these things. So it is a very, very important work that we've got to do. And the moment you become aware of your thoughts, the next thing is that you need to try to react to them. Now, of course, this may sound like a contradiction because the awareness may be, of course, something that doesn't involve an action. Because the awareness is not reactive. It just is there. However, from a psychological point of view, from purely an exercise point of view, when we use this sentence, we say react to it, we mean if it's negative thought, do something about this. If it's a positive thought, well, act on it also. Because each thought is kind of a contact made in a subtle realm between our mind and all these other elements and different thoughts and different beings also. Therefore, if a positive thought comes, don't drop it. If it's an inspirational thing, inspirational sentence comes to your mind, write it down. It is something very precious. It's like somebody dropped in your hands a precious jewels or something, and you decided to drop it. Similarly, when a negative thought comes, here you need to react because you don't want to empower it. It is because we become aware of the thought, it is that you depower it. And the more aware you are, the more you realize that the thoughts only gain the power according to what associative power you give to them. And this way you learn to not be controlled by objects, not be controlled by situations or people. And you always have that level of inner control in relation to everything experienced, outside or even within your own mind. So here is the next step. Living in the present. Of course, you say, oh my God, I know this. Well, we all know it, but do we do it? So living in the present, as Swami Shivananda says, yesterday is but a dream and tomorrow is but a vision. But what I'm saying here, I take a new angle on this particular statement, living in the present. Living in the present means to be free from the past. When you think of your past, you think of them in terms of hurts and certain pleasures. Now, here I would like to first concentrate on letting go of some hurts. We are coming into this stage of wonderful new year, and this particular time is very special. So it is a special time in terms of letting go. So let us see what that may mean. First, we should learn to not hold others as our mental hostages. You know, in our mind, there's like a little prison. Now, of course, we're part of the prison. We are the guardian of the prison, but nevertheless, we live in the prison. We call it the past memories. This prison of past painful memories is within our mind. So anyway, the point is here that we should try to release all these hostages, mental hostages, in the form of events, people that we experience some harm and hurt with. And we should be committed to building a new future. And this is why I'm saying this. So, of course, give up the illusion once for all that others are and have been responsible for who you are and, you know, how far you've gone in your life. This is very liberating. So try to resolve others of their obligations, so-called obligation that we created in our mind, that they owe us something. I think this is a very, very important aspect, and I like to think of that as living in the present. You know, bad things happen to all people. Now, it is simply the nature of life. Um, whatever we experience, day-to-day life, is something that we have worked for, either in this lifetime or previous lifetimes. We have earned it. And not just that, we have attracted it. We may not see the connection between what we experience in today and how we created particular causes in the past. At this point, that this is not relevant. You can just simply inference, because only when you have a yogic vision, you will know exactly why something took place. But in order to have that kind of a yogic vision, apart from being a great yogi, you have to also be very detached. And if you continuously emotionally responding to things, then it will be hard to know the reasons why we go through certain negative experiences, at least to say. So the resolution should be made to move forward, to heal. So I would suggest you write a little list of people that you consider to be responsible for um, any hurt that they may cause you, or for stunting your growth, which is what we usually think. We see this list can be very long, but sometimes there's some major players. Usually our parents, unfortunately, are the ones that are guilty of everything. Then there's some other people, then the lovers or whoever they are, and even spiritual teachers. Sometimes we may not necessarily like what they told us and how they instructed us and all that. So the secret is in one stroke, you write the names on and you say, I forgive you all. You don't need to contemplate anything. I mean, of course, the forgiveness exercises and all this. I just want to give you a few little reminders of something that you know, but this is a good way to do it. You write a list of things, and as you look at the person's name, you say, okay, I forgive you. And then you cross their name. Then the other one, okay. Then you can, you know, cut this piece of paper and then simply throw it out, or you can put it in a little fire, and this way you have made a commitment to look at them in a new way or not think of them necessarily. So this is the idea. You have to remember that life acts and delivers according to precise laws, which of course most of the time we're not aware of. Now, this season, as I said, of more kind of going in and within is the time for great rejuvenation and for enkindling the spirit of Jesus that is coming very soon to us. Therefore, it's the time for rejuvenation, for letting go, and for forgiveness. Now, you can think about this that even though the hurt may be there, we cannot necessarily always eradicate, and we don't need to suppress anything here. The hurt may be still there, but we should learn to think of it in a way that it doesn't control our life. And therefore, we need a commitment to this work so that we never dwell really on people's faults, on what they've done, or what they have not done, and simply to say bye-bye to this victim syndrome. This is a very important realization for myself also, and I think it will help you if you start to kind of not look for any external causes, or if I may say excuses, for having a lower vibration of our thoughts. I think this is the way to do it. So to forgive, of course, is the most beautiful quality, and it's kind of a practice of either remembering differently or forgetting. Now, of course, if a hurt is very strong, you won't be able to forget it, but you can reconstruct your thinking around this. And, of course, I will see very soon, concentrating on some ideals and some positive things in our life will allow us to transcend this negativity that is kind of in our minds. So, the beauty of being able to forgive is also that you're going to be able to rekindle your faith in a cosmic order and its justice. Unfortunately, when you think that you have been unjustly um, dealt with, or you know, if somebody has unjustly done something to you, you think there's got to be some problem somewhere. And I believe that this is only on, when we're very emotional and we're holding on to certain memories. What we really need to remember is that there's always a perfect justice in this creation, that nothing can be capriciously taking place. Whatever the experience is there is for us to learn something. Okay. So by learning to forgive in this way, also by committing to forgive, it may take time. Also, you are going to regain and rekindle your faith in people and essentially in the goodness that they have. So, so that's kind of what it is. Whenever the life, even now, from now on, delivers something to you that you're not quite in agreement with, because nobody likes to suffer, you should just say, I'm ready, I can handle this. I'm in control of my emotions, our mind in relation to this, and I will use my creativity and my positivity to deal with this problem. And remind yourself, if there are a few sentences you may heard tonight that resonate with you, that you may have not necessarily known, do try to um, contemplate upon them and put them into practice as many times as you can in a day. The one important thing about being the architect of your destiny is to be able to continuously hammer and repeat the same attitude, the same principle until it is mastered by you and it's accepted by you. Now, of course, to accept something deeply, you need to also feel it. Therefore, we need to add the quality of love into our mental work. Okay, so remember again that it is only our thoughts or our attitudes that the only thing that keep us back. So change the attitude, change the thought, the world will change accordingly. Even in this modern post-elections time, many people are suffering. They're saying, why is this happening? Why is that happening? No, we need to keep on working. We need to keep on changing every little thought of our mind and create better conditions for future. And the way to do this is Swami Vishnu would say, if you want to change a cotton cloth into silken one, you have to change every fiber, every thread, one at a time, not by revolution, but by evolution. If you want to change where you are and who you are as human beings, and we want to bring out your best potential, this is the work. Unfortunately, it's like that. One thought, I'm saying unfortunately because it takes time. But fortunately, that's the only way, and this kind of a change is guaranteed. So one thought at a time, one attitude at a time, one small area of your life at a time, one person at a time, one relationship at a time. So this way we can slowly bring the change that we ever wanted to see, but we did not, neither knew exactly the method, nor do we know how anything can change in life. Wherever there's a little bit of realization and understanding, this is taking place moment by moment, one by one. And if you add love to it, change becomes big and it spreads out fast. So um, life should be guided by a higher standards of ethics and also ideals. You will find an interesting thing is that the, the failing in ethics, which are typical for all of us humans, are really caused by just one problem. And as Swami Shivananda points this out, he says by fear. It is out of fear that people do all kinds of strange things, and we have done them, and we may still do them. And we'll find that the fear seems to lock our spirituality, and we're not able to act according to some greater truth. And the truth behind all ethics is there's just there is oneness. Therefore, whatever we do will affect somebody or will affect everybody in a sense. So what we want to do is to raise this level and also make a little exercises for us. For those people who know Raja Yoga, we know the Yamas. So ahimsa, all these things, non-violence, or rather say practice of kindness, truthfulness, all these things are wonderful opportunities for us. I mean, yamas of Raja Yoga are nothing but exercises given to human beings to align themselves with the greater truth where? Within themselves. But of course, if you align yourself with the greater truth in yourself, you can neither hurt nor can you lie, nor can you do any kinds of other things. Therefore, if we step way out of this way of thinking, where we're really ridden by fear, we will forever be able to live in great ethics. Now, living in ethics means living in oneness. Another important thing is that we should all have ideals. And these ideals are necessary for many, many reasons. First of all, ideal, every life follows an ideal. Our lives are colored by them. Therefore, if you have an ideal, your life gradually takes its own that character of it. In fact, let us say it like this: if you have an ideal, you become that ideal. So, if you want to understand the person, so let's say your partners or anybody like this, you have to know what their ideals are and what dominates their lives. So this is an important thing. And the reason for having an ideal is, first of all, the ideals are kind of transformative devices of human nature. Otherwise, we'll be always reveling in this low vibration if we did not have ideals. And for ideals, of course, we need to have um, an emotion tied into it so that we can gradually utilize the power of the ideal to transform ourselves. So, for example, our behavior obeys a certain laws. For example, if you have some kind of a plan, then you also establish a connection with the things and places and people, all kinds of forces that correspond to that plan, and so that no other thing can interfere with your plan. So let's say you want to go to Florida and you make that plan. So now what happens is that this plan has to be exercised in a way that you don't end up being in places such as Canada. So what happens is that you have to give yourself plans, which are basically ideals like this, in order to avoid all sorts of extraneous elements coming to distract you. It's like you want to go if you're rushing to get to work, but you constantly allow yourself to be diverted, from your route, you will never get to work. So this is why these ideals are like the methods of preserving one's own energy, and also they can enable us to utilize our times in a better way. So anyway, sometimes the ideals may seem unachievable, and I would say that that doesn't really matter. Let's say your ideal may be that everybody should have something to eat. And okay, there may There's still people who are hungry. Yet that ideal is important. First, of course, it will benefit some people, but the person who is most benefited is yourself. So there is, if you keep constantly in your mind the ideal of something, what will happen? You're going to master this science and the art of self-empowerment. I think one of the problems that we suffer from, even not just individually, but even collectively, is this belief that we just don't have that energy, the strength available to us. We have been taught so many times that we're simply not adequate enough to achieve the grand things of this life. Now, when we say grand things, I don't mean the things such as a success in a regular life, because sometimes a success in a regular life may mean a loss of your other life, which is why many people who have plenty of money and plenty of things, whatever they want to enjoy, they've lost their lives. They lost the inner enjoyment, the qualities of the inner qualities that they've been sacrificed in the name of achievements. Therefore, when I say a success, I mean it in a positive sense, mainly as a success within, uh, be able to bring our personality into a state of integration that we experience greater joy. Normally, you need to have a spiritual ideal before you set up any other ideals. So when we speak of ideals here, we do mean there should be within the domain of ethics, or good qualities of virtues, and of course spiritual ideals such as the knowledge of the self, or whatever is the way you express this in your mind. So the advantage of living an ideal is that gradually all your imperfections are simply skimmed off, and you're becoming a more and more just like your ideal. So there is a tremendous power in that expecting, to become something larger than you are at this point, and that your dream will come true. So that's the secret of having the ideals, and I think you can write them down. Again, you're coming into this wonderful time, a new year. It's kind of a time everybody is psychologically considering what can they do with their lives, how can they improve them. And of course, keep a spiritual diary, because without a spiritual diary, you would not have a clear understanding in which direction you're moving, what exercise you're doing. If without a spiritual diary, people, they inspired for that too, and then they let go, and then they come back to it, and so on. Don't ever believe that the mind has to remember all the details of what you do in your day. Let the diary do that job. Write it down, whatever you have wanted to master. So this brings us to the same idea of utilizing the knowledge, the fact that we every moment is kind of the time of a choice. So we're given these choices, and we should make use of them. Another important thing is, as Swami Shivananda mentions, is don't believe. Truly, if possible, you practice like this for 1 day or 1 week, and if you can, extend it to 3 months. Don't believe that life is full of problems. Swami Shivananda says life is not full of problems. Yeah, he says this is an act of Maya, this illusory power of creation, and that's to convince us that all we have to do from morning till evening is worry and think, okay, how am I going to deal with this? How can I do with that? So, of course, again, the spiritual sadhana or practice is essential to be able to deal with that. But try to think of your life in this way as a suggestion. And you can write for every one of these things I'm going to mention now. You can write a few, maybe people or circumstances or whatever that are weighing you down. So try to think of obstacles. So you can write 3, 4 obstacles. Think of them as stepping stones. This is possible. Surely it's possible. You have to, this is called the spiritualization um, of your life of difficulties, because this is exactly, if you, of course, if you're emotionally upset about everything that comes in your life, then you cannot practice this. But you start. What is an obstacle? How does it manifest in my life? And how can it become a stepping stone? Then the difficulties, or rather call them challenges, are nothing but opportunities. Again, you can write this down. Think about what challenges, difficulties you have. Of course, sometimes they may be the same as obstacles, but let us see. And why and how can they be opportunities? You need to contemplate about this. I know it's not going to be all of a sudden, but suddenly you will see, if you just do it once, you're going to feel an enormous power coming from within you. You're going to just feel this trickling of this energy, and amazing thing. So this is also a part of the empowering, self-empowerment, is that you become free from all the things that the people that owe you something, and now you're committed to making your life as much as difficult it can be. And your spiritual aspirants, difficulties will come. It's absolutely normal. Yes, so how could we look at them? For example, you can think of hardships as major tests. Like when you go to a school or college, there's a minor test and there's a major test. It's a test of your strength, it's a test of your faith, it's a test of your spirituality, whatever it is. And we all get them, and they will all come. So how to look at them? You can think of the hardships also as the breakthroughs. Sometimes great insights can arise from a particular hardship if we approach it in a very in a with patience and with love, and we don't panic. This is important. Okay, so hardships can be, as is a major test of breakthroughs, also in increasing our understanding, increasing our grace in life, increasing our, leading us to greater discovery and greater learning. How can we look at the suffering, for example? We suffer sometimes in physical body, sometimes we suffer in mind, sometimes we suffer surrounded by other people. Well, each suffering is a form of a molding, as Swami Shivananda was saying. He molds our lives. It's like a little, uh, what a person, a sculptor who works on it tries to kind of create the right type of a shape and form, maximum of that spirit to manifest through. That's called molding. And you have also another aspect. You can look at the suffering as a burning off some impurities. This is the spiritual way of looking at them. So we can also look at difficult people, and I'm sure that you must have a few, like each one of us, or perhaps people we consider to be ungrateful, as simply a rare objects of our love. And we can try to exercise to love something that is not pleasant and agreeable necessarily in our life. This will be a test of our spirit. And so this is one way. Then you can think of a crisis of any form. These are all interconnected things, right? But you can think of a crisis as a springboard or a quantum leap of your realization and the application of right action. Diseases can be looked at as karmic purgations, since a disease manifests always as kind of a nature's way of curtailing our freedom in a sense in order to rediscipline ourselves. We can look at it that way. Presence of evil, the bad things in life, is nothing but a glorification of good and spiritual. So remember that. And as we can make a few more points here, one is to try to live your life in details and fragments. Don't wait for big chunks of time, because the architects of life are not built when the people wait. Oh, well, let me let me get this month or that weekend or that week. No, today, in this very moment, you're going to do something that is uplifting, positive, something that will change your vibration. Maybe, perhaps, you had really a bad day, irritable news, lack of money, bad news from all directions. You say, no, now is the time to practice this. It's like people who have their prayer or their mantra or something. They don't give that up because suddenly, there's a difficult moment in life. At these moments should intensify your practice, but they cannot intensify your practice unless you really practice all the time. So the idea, as I mentioned in the beginning, is that our practice should become 24-hour practice. So our choice is to live, as somebody said very beautifully, uh, deliberately. And to think not by habit. We will have to give up the habit of thinking in a particular way. We need to think in a new way always. So this, of course, requires some mastery over our emotions. And perhaps to conclude for the day, I would like to say that really, if there's anything that holds you back in your life, apart from, of course, your own thoughts, but it's really the desires that are not in accordance with your evolution, with your growing. So we could say that it is our desires that really hold us back. Out of these desires that become magnificent forces, unfortunately, there come temptations. And the temptations are nothing but unconquered desires. And this is what makes our life miserable. We may think that desire solves the problems, but from a spiritual point of view, desires only complicate problems. Now, can we live without desires? No, but let us try to make them a little bit more pure, a little more positive, a little bit more sublime or sattvic. Slowly, remember, one thread at a time. Another important message probably for us as spiritual aspirants in building this building of spirituality, this wonderful, castle of self-realization is to try to read less and try to think about what you've read more and try to apply even more of what you um, practice. So this way, I've wanted to cover a couple of things, and just to finish something on a nice thing, I feel like people who are committed to spirituality, meaning also to bringing down the spirit down into the matter. So when I say committed to spirituality, I don't mean that the person should be locked up in a room 24 hours a day. Perhaps it's good for somebody who is highly advanced, but it's to really bring your spirituality into your daily life with the people that you live that may not be spiritual. So that's what we need to do in our modern times. And many people are not um, joyful enough. So my suggestion is to work on increasing your joy. What most people experience as joy is when they receive a gift or they get something that they wanted. Therefore, a desire, kind of a fulfillment of desires behind what they call a joy. And then in order for that to happen, they need to own that what they want to experience joy in. But we can, as spiritual aspirants, learn to experience joy in many other ways. For example, when you look at the sunrise or sunset or beautiful sky, you see all these things can be truly enjoyed and yet not owned. As you know, things that we own us. So we need to find again that true joy, which is really living simply and trying to, you know, try to try to live the same principles, but try to give them a new coating, a new kind of a garment. For example, um, do the same practice of meditation, the same practice of, you know, there will be some principal things, either in spiritual practices as we know them, or in the practice of virtues. So to be always um, animated by the same love and the same ideal, but to always manifest it in a new way. So if you, let's say, you have a pet, the beauty about having a pet is that with the pet you manifest your love always in a new way, and so does the pet. Similarly, in any of your relationships, whether it's a relationship with your own self or with your practice or with other people, let that relationship be based on several principles, but you always have to try to animate it. Um, there has to be animation in each thing you do, but it's done in a way that this, whatever the love is there, whatever you're trying to accomplish, is expressed in a new way and a new creative way. So that's the idea, is that in all this process of working with your mind, do not forget to smile, do not forget to laugh, and it's completely legitimate, it's okay, it's accepted that you can have your joy in this life. I know that this joy hard to, contemplate if we do not get what we want or what we actually need. But the higher form of joy is such that you can even have it in the midst of some suffering. So I remind you that with these words about the joy and and the great kind of inspiration, you proceed making each step towards self-realization and be a true architect of your destiny, which means you are the architect of your own destiny and no one else. So my salutations here to you now, and we will finish with the mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Bol Sadguru Shiva Maharaj ki Jai. Bol Shri Devan Maharaj ki